The courtroom fell silent as the video played grainy footage that showed more than words ever could. Within moments, Diddy's twin daughters Jessie and Delilah rose from their seats visibly shaken and stormed out without saying a word. Cameras didn't follow, but reporters whispered among themselves. They looked pale, ashamed. What unfolded next wasn't just graphic, it was damning. At the center of it all was a term Cassie Ventura introduced to define the darkest chapter of her relationship with Sean Diddy. Combs freak off. What began as whispers and rumors has now exploded into federal testimony, hard evidence, and shattered lives in the gallery. This isn't merely another celebrity scandal, this is a courtroom reckoning, a moment where decades of silence are being unraveled before our eyes. From threatening text messages to shocking surveillance tapes, the Diddy trial is exposing layers of control, manipulation, and psychological dominance that have remained hidden for years, and now even his own family can no longer bear to watch. As we delve deeper into what transpired during those tense days in court, you'll see how one man's carefully constructed empire of fame and influence began to crumble under the weight of truth. By the time you finish this narrative, your perception of power, control, and accountability may be forever altered. Let's explore not only what happened inside that courtroom, but also why it matters and why understanding its implications goes far beyond mere curiosity about celebrity life. When the lights dimmed and the prosecution requested the courtroom's attention, everyone knew something significant was coming, but no one, not the jury, not the spectators, nor even Diddy himself, was prepared for what followed. The judge approved a motion to show the jury a piece of evidence long talked about in hushed tones but never confirmed publicly, a video labeled Freak Off 2013, film that a Miami penthouse prosecutors had warned about its content while defense attorneys fought tooth and nail to block its presentation. Their efforts failed when the judge ruled in favor of transparency, though a partial blackout was ordered and the courtroom cameras were turned off, leaving only the jury, attorneys, Diddy, and select observers, including members of his family, to witness what would unfold. As the video began, Cassie Ventura, seated quietly near the jury box, remained stoic. She didn't flinch or shift her gaze. In stark contrast, Diddy's demeanor changed instantly. Gone was the arrogance he had displayed on previous days. He slouched slightly, his hands clasped tightly together, his eyes glued to the screen as if bracing himself for impact. About halfway through the footage, an emotional rupture occurred. His daughters Jessie and Delilah stood abruptly. Eyewitnesses reported hearing one of them mutter, "No, I can't," before walking out. Their faces were blank yet broken, a haunting reflection of the turmoil within. Reporters stationed outside captured the twins leaving the courthouse, flanked by aides and security personnel. They refused to comment, their silence speaking volumes. Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, the video continued playing while much of the footage was blurred or redacted for legal reasons. Key moments relayed in summary painted a chilling picture. Cassie appeared alongside an unidentified individual in what prosecutors described as an orchestrated and directed scenario. Diddy's voice allegedly echoed behind the camera, issuing instructions with calculated precision, though specific details remain obscured. The emotional toll on viewers was undeniable. Jurors exchanged uneasy glances, some visibly disturbed. One reportedly wiped away tears, another clenched her jaw so tightly it seemed she might crack her teeth. This wasn't salacious content meant to titillate, it was proof of control, proof of psychological dominance. Most importantly, it was validation of Cassie's claims that she hadn't exaggerated the extent of Diddy's influence over her life. Every detail matched her earlier testimony, her age at the time, the production-like setup, the choreographed nature of these events. As the screen faded to black, the room remained eerily quiet. No murmurs, no whispers, only the sound of the judge instructing the court to take a 15-minute recess. It was as if the collective breath of everyone present had been stolen. Cassie's decision to testify marked a pivotal moment in the trial. Her presence on the stand carried immense gravity, not just because of her role as the prosecution's key witness, but because of the deeply personal nature of her story. 8 months pregnant, she walked into the courtroom calmly, placing her coat behind her and turning slightly to face the jury. Throughout her testimony, she often rubbed her belly, a subtle yet symbolic gesture signaling that she wasn't merely reliving trauma but protecting a new life while recounting a painful past. Her account began with the first mention of the term freak off. She explained how Diddy introduced it when she was 21. Naive and unsure of its meaning, he framed it as voyeurism, telling her it would strengthen their bond. What started as romantic quickly morphed into something else entirely: control. According to Cassie, Diddy dictated everything: what she wore, what she said, even which drugs to take. Text messages recovered from his Louis Vuitton bag illustrated this level of micromanagement. In one exchange, she asked him which color pill. His reply came swiftly: the green one. Cassie testified that freak-offs weren't spontaneous occurrences but meticulously planned productions. Lights, outfits, camera placements, all were rehearsed and scheduled down to the smallest detail. Participants, many of whom she claimed were escorts, were sometimes hired by her out of fear of retribution if she refused. "I did it because I thought I loved him," she told the court, her voice trembling, "because I didn't want to make him angry, because I didn't know how to say no anymore." When asked directly whether she ever wanted to participate, Cassie paused before answering. "At times, yes," she admitted, "because it meant I got to spend time with him, but I never wanted the pressure, the fear." Her words resonated deeply, revealing the duality of her emotions: love intertwined with dread, intimacy overshadowed by coercion. Meanwhile, Diddy sat visibly unraveling. Observers noted him scribbling furiously on a yellow notepad, shaking his leg beneath the table. At one point he leaned toward his attorney, whispering something while pointing at Cassie. His complexion paled, a stark departure from the charismatic figure once hailed as the life of the party. It was as if he were sentencing himself in real time, unable to escape the weight of the accusations mounting against him. The defense attempted to counter Cassie's narrative by arguing that the relationship was consensual, emphasizing her involvement in hiring participants and her failure to use the word no. However, the prosecution countered with a powerful question: what happens to a woman who knows what no might cost her? While the jury grappled with Cassie's harrowing testimony, Diddy's family struggled to maintain composure. His mother, Jessie Combs, clutched a rosary, her eyes shut tight as if praying for deliverance. His sons, King and Justin, avoided eye contact with their father, staring straight ahead with arms folded. Occasionally they glanced at the jury's reactions, searching for clues about how the case might unfold, but it was his daughters, Jessie and Delilah, barely 17, who bore the brunt of the emotional devastation. Until this point they had managed to project a composed facade. Seeing the video, however, shattered whatever resolve they had left. Their abrupt exit sparked speculation about potential family secrets lurking beneath the surface. The prosecution hinted at this possibility by raising questions about Diddy's late ex, Kim Porter. Cassie revealed that Diddy instructed her to keep their relationship private, citing concerns about his children and Kim's feelings. Yet according to Cassie, Diddy's relationship with Kim overlapped with hers. "We weren't public for a long time," she stated, "but he was still with Kim. We both knew. He made sure we both knew." This revelation cast a darker shadow over the proceedings. Cassie recounted a confrontation between Diddy and Kim regarding his behavior. A week later, Kim was hospitalized. Diddy reassured Cassie that Kim was fine, but doubts lingered. Years later, Kim's death in 2018 raised even more questions. Officially ruled as pneumonia, her passing has been met with skepticism by some, including Al B. Sure, Kim's ex and the father of Quincy. During the trial, prosecutors introduced texts where Cassie expressed fears of ending up like Kim. When asked why, she replied bluntly, "Because I knew too much and he knew that I knew." The courtroom grew quieter still as Cassie peeled back another layer of her testimony. She described a support system that facilitated Diddy's alleged misconduct. Names emerged: David James, Christina Carora, multiple assistants, travel agents, and private security firms. These individuals weren't passive bystanders. She insisted they actively enabled the very structure that perpetuated her suffering. One of the most damning revelations came when she detailed how Diddy tracked her movements. If she failed to respond promptly, someone would appear at her door, sometimes security personnel, sometimes Christina herself. "He had access to my phone, my location, even my private messages," Cassie revealed. Once she tried to invite a friend over, only for the friend to never show up. When she questioned Diddy, he casually mentioned having warned her off. The prosecutor pressed further, asking whether she feared for her safety. Without hesitation, Cassie answered, "Every day." Then after a pause she added softly, "But I feared for hers too." According to Cassie, Diddy's operation was anything but spontaneous. It was deliberate machinery designed to exert maximum control. Travel documents, fake bookings, escort listings, everything was meticulously planned. Participants were often disguised as stylists or dancers to avoid suspicion. Trips spanned cities like Miami, Los Angeles, New York, and Ibiza, each destination adhering to the same routine: drugs, outfits, lighting, setups, and scenes lasting anywhere from 36 to 72 hours. The longest session stretched 4 full days without sleep, fueled solely by pills and Diddy's commands. Prosecutors highlighted how this network of enablers mirrored the definition of racketeering. This wasn't just a man indulging in personal habits, it was a business-like operation rooted in manipulation, entrapment, and exploitation. With every name Cassie listed, the list of potential witnesses grew longer, painting a portrait of systemic abuse sustained by complicity. As Cassie transitioned from logistics to psychology, jurors began to grasp the depth of Diddy's hold over her. This wasn't merely physical abuse, it was emotional warfare, admitting something that sent a ripple through the room. Cassie confessed, "I loved him." Her voice faltered, but the weight of her words landed heavily. "I loved him the way you love someone who saves you even if they're also the one hurting you." She elaborated on the dual nature of Diddy's affection early in their relationship. He could be kind, sweet, generous, making her feel like the only person who mattered, yet this affection came with strings attached: compliance, participation, silence. All were prerequisites for earning his approval. Love became currency doled out sparingly as both reward and punishment. Fear loomed large, ensuring her loyalty even when doubt crept in. Text messages exchanged during those years offered conflicting narratives. On one hand, there were expressions of affection and eagerness from Cassie, which the defense later pointed to as evidence of mutual interest, but Cassie clarified, "I said what I needed to say to feel safe." Sometimes it wasn't even about the act, it was about surviving the moment. One particularly poignant memory stood out. Cassie recalled attempting to back out of a freak-off by writing an email addressing her discomfort. Diddy's response cut deep. "I know you don't want to do it." Instead of standing firm, she recanted, "I was scared he'd cut me off." She admitted, "I lied because the truth would have made him angry." Jurors listened intently, several nodding slowly as they processed the duality. Cassie described loving someone who simultaneously inflicted harm. Her voice cracked only once during this segment when asked directly, "Did you ever enjoy it?" Cassie's answer stunned the room. "I didn't enjoy what we did, but I loved him, and that made everything confusing." By now the courtroom understood that Cassie's ordeal wasn't an isolated incident. Prosecutors drew parallels to Diddy's history, with Kim Porter asking Cassie outright if she ever felt her life might be in danger. Yes, she responded firmly, especially after what happened with Kim. She claimed Diddy withheld details about Kim's final days, dismissing her illness as minor despite suspicions otherwise. Referencing Kim's sudden death in 2018, officially attributed to pneumonia, Cassie voiced lingering doubts. "She was fine one day and gone the next," she said, adding that she was warned to stay silent afterward. "He told me not to talk to anyone, said people were watching, said I needed to stay out of it." Prosecutors then introduced a chain of texts between Cassie and a close friend where she ominously wrote, "If I ever disappear like Kim, it wasn't random." The courtroom held its breath as the prosecutor posed a haunting question, "Do you feel your story could have ended like Kim's?" After a prolonged pause, Cassie whispered, "Yes, that's why I left, that's why I'm here." The emotional weight in the room was palpable. Cassie's fear transcended the personal, it was historical, tied to someone silenced too soon under questionable circumstances. The judge called another break, but several jurors remained seated, heads bowed. Diddy meanwhile sat silent, pale and cornered, not just by the law but by the ghosts of his own past. Day 3 of Cassie's testimony reached a boiling point when the judge allowed the jury to view a short excerpt of a recorded freak-off video allegedly taken by Diddy himself, stored on a private hard drive and later recovered by Cassie before she left him. The footage became a flashpoint in the trial. Despite fierce objections from the defense, the court ruled in favor of transparency, albeit with strict conditions. Cameras were barred from the courtroom, creating a chilling atmosphere as the lights dimmed and the screen flickered to life. Those in attendance described the gallery leaning forward collectively, even the court sketch artist pausing mid-drawing as the footage played. Reactions were immediate and visceral. Several members of the gallery averted their eyes, unable to confront the imagery unfolding before them. One juror covered her mouth in shock while others exchanged uneasy glances. But the most dramatic moment came when Diddy's twin daughters Jessie and Delilah, who had been sitting stoically beside their grandmother Janice, suddenly stood up and exited the courtroom. Observers noted the stunned expressions on their faces, wide-eyed lips trembling as they departed. They did not return. Though the video wasn't explicit in the manner many anticipated, what it revealed struck a nerve. Cassie's posture in the clip was tense, her eyes darting nervously between the camera and the unseen director behind it. Visible signs of discomfort permeated her movements, which appeared mechanical, as though she were following instructions she desperately wished to disobey. After the footage concluded, the prosecution asked Cassie to explain what the jury had witnessed. "That was the first time I cried in front of him after a freak-off," she said, her voice quivering but resolute, "because I couldn't take it anymore and he still picked up the camera." The defense objected repeatedly, arguing that the footage lacked context and insisting it depicted consensual activity, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Paired with Cassie's earlier testimony, the visual component formed a devastating image, not merely of abuse but of routine, something rehearsed and directed. One juror leaned over to whisper to another, "That's all I needed." In that moment the trial shifted. Irrevocably, this was no longer just about Cassie's words, it now had a face, a video in a room full of people who could no longer deny what they saw. Cassie's final day on the stand ended with a warning that reverberated throughout the courtroom. There are more of us. It didn't take long for this statement to bear fruit. By the time the next court session convened, the prosecution announced that additional former employees, driver's assistants, even a hairstylist were now willing to come forward. Each new witness added layers to the growing web of allegations surrounding Diddy, reinforcing patterns of control, intimidation, and exploitation. Among them was Israel Flores, a former hotel security officer who corroborated Cassie's earlier claim of seeing her with a bruised eye. I was told to ignore it, he testified, but I logged it anyway. His independent account lent credibility to the 2016 surveillance footage presented earlier in the trial. Next, a former assistant unnamed publicly described transporting locked briefcases across state lines. She admitted believing they contained cash or drugs due to the secrecy surrounding them when pressed. She recounted receiving burner phones with explicit instructions not to ask questions. Perhaps the most compelling testimony came from Daniel Phillip, a male escort hired multiple times between 2012 and 2013. Initially contracted privately, his experiences quickly turned coercive. I didn't want to go back, he admitted, but I was told they'd ruin my license, my career. Identifying Diddy as the orchestrator, Phillip described being given precise directions and monitored closely. Every new witness reinforced the consistency of Cassie's testimony, revealing a methodical approach to invitations, NDAs, money exchanges, and ultimate control wielded by Diddy. With each name, each tier of reluctant memories, Diddy's empire began to resemble less an entertainment label and more a machine for silence. The prosecution built a case not just of isolated incidents but of pattern, organization, and possibly criminal conspiracy. By now, the image of Sean Diddy Combs sitting confidently behind his defense table had evaporated. The man who once dominated rooms with bravado now sat, sunken eyes darting anxiously between lawyers and jurors, visibly sweating. His carefully curated persona, honed over decades of success, fame, and control, was dissolving in real time. During a brief recess, Diddy made an unscripted move that startled everyone. Ignoring his lawyers' attempts to stop him, he rose to address the judge. "Excuse me, Your Honor," he said, his voice shaky. The courtroom froze. The judge raised an eyebrow, responding curtly, "Mr. Combs, you'll have your time through counsel." That single line encapsulated the entire narrative. Diddy, once untouchable, now reduced to pleading for understanding. Back in session, the prosecution dropped another bombshell. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, would testify. Mentioning his name elicited gasps from the gallery. Deal had long warned about Diddy's dark side, sharing stories about freak-offs, Kim Porter, NDAs, burner phones, and silenced staff. Until now, he existed only as a voice on podcasts and YouTube interviews. Now he might take the stand. The defense immediately objected, citing hearsay and credibility issues, but the judge allowed a sidebar. When the court reconvened, it was clear Gene Deal's testimony was imminent. "Well, take him on Monday," the judge declared. As the day closed, the final image wasn't Cassie's testimony or the video. It was Diddy, silent and isolated, watching as his daughters walked past him without a word, refusing to meet his gaze. The man who once controlled everything, who determined what music we heard, what artists we loved, what parties made headlines, no longer commanded the room. The freak-off footage may have shifted the narrative, but the avalanche of truth pouring out from former insiders and the crumbling defenses of his legal team had rewritten his legacy. This wasn't just a court case anymore, it was a reckoning, a moment where power, control, and accountability collided in ways that will resonate far beyond the confines of the courtroom.